unprecedented times, and it is important to follow the guidelines set forth by your public officials. Remember, during these trying times, it is important to social distance, remain at least 6 feet apart, avoid large crowds, and keep social gatherings down to as few people as possible. As a mandate, all non-essential establishments and businesses must cease operation. Remember, we are all in this together.
Remember this? It seems like so long ago. Practically the entire country shut down, and it virtually happened overnight. Actually seems like a bit of a blur. How did we even end up in all of this? Good times. Crowds of people, gatherings, everything open for business.
I can't help but feel good. I can't help but feel fine. Everything is in its place and everything is mine.
Yeah, things weren't perfect, but they were a whole lot better than going through the aftermath. And the reports began. People started getting sick. Fear began to grow. There was a thing about toilet paper. Not sure what that was about. Sporting events canceled. Schools closed. Businesses forced to close. Churches shut their doors. And all at once, the whole world seemed to shut down. And there we were, quarantined, isolated, uncertain about the future. You know, it's true that we can't change the past. But we can ask the right questions, so we can learn from it and help direct our future.
I'm focused. I've been watching for the omens. I've been listening to everything you said. It's been running through my head, locked and loaded. I got the feeling that you know it. Yeah, I've only just begun. I won't stop until it's done, till you're broken. So welcome to the fire. I'm the one with the light. Feel it burning through your veins as we're walking through the flames, getting higher. So welcome to the fire. Welcome to the fire. Feel it burning through your veins as we're walking through the flames, getting higher.
Our world in the United States looks completely different. I don't think there's any area of life that hasn't been affected in some way by the COVID event. Businesses are shuttered, churches are closed, schools are closed now, and it's just arbitrary in some ways. My focus now is on questions. A lot of people were just not asking the question why, or even the question how long. The biggest question in my head is what happens next? I feel like we've given up a lot of our freedoms through this process. We are here This is the site of the first US reported COVID death. And at that point, decisions needed to be made by medical professionals. How do we save our patients? By elected officials and leadership. How do we protect our states and still maybe keep our economy going? And by US citizens. How do we preserve our livelihoods? I think the biggest challenge to America was finding the balance between saving human life and preserving our civil liberties. That's a question that needed to be answered.
Thanks everyone for being here. It's important for you to know that I'm speaking to all of Colorado when I say that now is the time to stay at home.
Early on in the third week of March, we didn't have any real options. We didn't have any great testing. We didn't know where cases were occurring. So at the time, it may have made sense.
In the beginning, to be fair, when people didn't know, it's like, okay, let's keep people at home.
We're a free people in America, and we're just asking folks, but for the next 2 weeks, if we can give a little, we believe we're going to get a lot.
At the very beginning, everybody pretty much stepped back and said, hey, let's see what has happened.
For the first 2 or 3 weeks, they were going to let the government do what they had to do because nobody knew what was coming.
But that really should have been a very short-lived response as we built up capacity based on knowing where cases are occurring, knowing where cases are not occurring.
We knew a lot in March, and there were already poor decisions that were being made in March out of fear, the concept of flattening the curve.
I've spoken with many of my colleagues across the city and the state, and we all acknowledge that this is the only way forward.
You could argue that it was in the public's best interests for the government to act decisively initially, but to go on for as long as we have with these sort of Machiavellian tactics.
This virus is unforgiving. It spreads before you even know you've caught it.
The mindset behind the leaders was we're going to have a zero transmission. That all of a sudden this virus is just going to go away. We're going to hide for a certain period of time, and when we come out, it's going to be gone. Well, that hasn't worked, has it?
It's been observed, if it were possible to wave a magic wand and make all Americans freeze in place for 14 days, 6 feet away from one another, the whole epidemic would sputter to a halt.
There are things that we've, in essence, not addressed and kind of let get out of control. And now there are lots of people who are very afraid of something that, quite honestly, is not something to be afraid of.
Please know that even with today's action, the number of cases will go up yet today, tomorrow, in the days ahead. It will take some time for us to impact this. We will be continually evaluating the data, the science, the impact on our health, so we can draw conclusions based on data.
Everyone is leaning on the science, especially state governors. They're saying, look at the science, look at the science. So the science shows it's okay for us to issue a stay-at-home order. The science shows it's okay for us to extend this order.
Let's unpack science as a standard. It turns out that there is not a single intervention that has been recommended by the World Health Organization or by the Center for Disease Control that didn't come from a computer simulation. Not a single intervention that they have proposed, not a single intervention that they've instituted has come from a double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical trial. In fact, in 1918, the United States U.S. Army, during the Spanish influenza, did a study on social distancing and found that the social distance population had a worse infectivity of all-cause morbidity, meaning there were more sicknesses in the stay-at-home social distancing population than there were in the general population. So unfortunately, the science explicitly says stay-at-home social distancing is bad for you. That's what the science says.
I want everyone to hear me. Stay home.
If you do a general lockdown, then you tend not to focus on, okay, who's really being hurt by this?
Since the beginning of the epidemic, we've been looking at case reports from Wuhan, China, and from Italy, and then from Europe, and then from New York City and the rest of the United States. And we've seen this differential mortality in those who are older, 10% or greater, among those who are above the age of 80, less than 1% in those under the age of 50. And in California, it's essentially 0% in those who are under the age of 18. So there's a very strong gradation and effect of age on the risk. So nursing homes and elderly populations are where we need to focus.
We should have rallied around the people who were 65 and older, the people that had pre-existing medical conditions. That's what the science said. We should have never asked healthy individuals to hide.
And if we think back to the very first COVID cases, they were in a nursing home in Washington State. It's a stunning number. Almost 50% of all the deaths come out of nursing homes.
Those are the populations I feel that should have been predominantly protected. Not, exclude everyone else, but if we focused on them, I think it would have minimized the numbers.
Some hospitals, I asked as a goal, try to increase by 100% your capacity.
In mid-March, our governor made an executive order that mandated that all nursing homes in New York State could not exclude a resident admission based solely on a COVID positive test result. So meaning we still had to allow admissions come in knowing they were COVID positive, or they didn't even have to disclose if they were COVID positive.
Now is the time to be aggressive and do things you've never done before.
You look at Cuomo and a couple of other states that sent COVID patients back to the nursing home, direct from the hospital.
That happened in California and New York, two of the largest totals. Well, that's murder, isn't it? That's manslaughter. How did you not figure that out?
I just feel like we didn't care about the elderly. I just feel like society probably looked at them as they're elderly, they're they're disposable, and they're not. They're our elderly. You judge a nation on how they treat their babies, and they're elderly, and they're veterans, and we don't do a good job at any.
And in my opinion, we made a big mistake there. We didn't listen to science. What we did was we said to everyone, hide.
Starting tomorrow evening, Saturday, March 21st at 5 p.m. until the end of April 7th, all our residents will be subject to a stay-at-home order.
The system is the governor declares the emergency and then he sets the parameters.
These are the rules. No non-essential gatherings.
With a health emergency, he doesn't have to listen to anybody. And if the legislature is out of session, which they were, and the judges defer to the governor, look what happens. Kids don't go to school, people's businesses shut down, everyone is out of work, people walk around terrified.
These efforts are all aimed at social distancing.
So I'm going to do that one more time for New Mexicans. New Mexico's legal authority has always allowed us to restrict business operations, both publicly and privately, that protects the public health and safety of every single New Mexican.
Now, what happens if his data is wrong, or he's not using data, and he's just being abusive? What happens when he's just being arbitrary? What happens when he has a fit of anger against somebody who's rebelled?
But specific issues on some of those beaches have raised alarm bells, just in the Orange County area.
And unfortunately, what's been going on in California is the governor has taken his emergency powers, which are designed to regulate state and county resources, and he has used that and basically said, I am now going to deprive people of their fundamental rights of movement, their ability to make a living, their ability to hold protests, their ability to worship God as they see fit. And I'm going to just deprive everybody of those rights. And I'm going to pass off to an unelected public health official who nobody knew existed half a year ago. And that person, whatever they say, has now become the law of the state.
The declaration grants broad authority to the state public health director, to OHA, and to the Office of Emergency Management.
I remember reading early on, even before it spread, somebody wrote, people are going to find out just how much power a public health official has. Like a county public health director, state public health director, and they do. Their power is enormous because if the governor signs off on their rules, then that's the law. And the governor's not going to question the public health director because what does the governor know?
I'm here at the Michigan State Capitol in my office, and I'm joined by our Chief Medical Executive, Dr. Janae Khaldun. Dr. Khaldun and all of these experts recommended today's action, and it is clear this is what we can and must do to protect ourselves.
And so even though the public health professionals are guiding governors by telling them we have a dangerous threat, people will get sick, people will die, that's not a lie, that's very true. The question is does our action merit the actual risk that we're encountering? And it doesn't.
Thank you and good morning. I appreciate you all being here this early on a Sunday morning. I have consulted with the Oregon Health Authority, and I am declaring a state of emergency.
March 23rd is the day that our governor announced that all businesses that were non-essential closed down. She called directly out our businesses, so tanning salons, hair salons, and fitness centers and gyms. Essentially, she shut down most of the state. I've been a hairstylist for 15 years, and I've had this salon for 11 years. Between my husband and I, we own 6 businesses total, and all were deemed non-essential during the shutdown. There are ex-military women that work here. There are single moms. There are moms who they are the sole provider for their family, even though their husband works. We're talking 25 people in the salon that suddenly didn't have a job.
This state of emergency will remain in effect for 60 days. It can be extended until the public health threat of the virus is contained.
And it wasn't until weeks later that, our governor specifically would not nail down timelines for anyone or dates, and it was a growing concern.
In March, I issued Oregon's Stay Home, Save Lives order. I know it was just a month ago, but holy smokes, it feels a lot longer than that.
It was that week of May 2nd that I decided I needed to start doing hair again to at least bring some sort of income into our family to sort of offset the debt that we were now going into. I wasn't doing it to specifically defy the governor. I was doing it because I believed that we have a human and constitutional right to earn a living.
If there was groups of people here in support, how did they all know that you were reopening?
I posted that I was going to open my salon on May 5th, and could I please get the support of these group members? Unfortunately for me, that group is public, and so people started sharing my post. And by the end of the day, there were news channels saying they wanted to interview me about it. On May 4th, OSHA showed up at my door and basically told me if I move forward with opening the next day, he would come and issue me a $1,000 citation, and I would be required to shut down. If I did not shut down, he could come back the very same day, or the very next day, and he would issue me what's called a red tag citation. It means that he's deemed my entire facility as hazardous, and it would be on lockdown, and I would be issued a $70,000 citation. This is before I even opened my doors.
When I was first contacted, what I know about hair salons is that hairstylists are independent contractors. OSHA only has jurisdiction over places of employment, which are places where there are employees, not independent contractors. So I didn't think that OSHA had jurisdiction to begin with. This was clearly, I think, a message that was sent by the state of Oregon to Lindsay that she better do what they tell her, otherwise they're gonna play hardball.
I opened my doors on Tuesday, May 5th. The first day that I opened was extremely stressful. It was invigorating, it was exciting. The energy on the streets and inside the salon was palpable. I mean, we were doing something very big. By Friday, I was here at work when I was called by my babysitter to inform me that Child Protective Services showed up at my home.
There was an article in the Oregonian on the front page, I think in the Statesman Journal here in Salem, where she said the reason why she was doing it was to protect her kids. Well, she basically told the state what was important to her. And not surprisingly, 3 days later, some Child Protective Service investigator shows up at her front door at her house. They know she's not there, to conduct an investigation on an anonymous complaint out of nowhere. That's not a coincidence. I mean, that somebody was sending a message to her.
The main reason I'm here today is I want the public to understand what's happening to me by the government in full detail, the intimidation and the bullying. On May 7th, Child Protective Services showed up at my home. They questioned my husband and I. They questioned my child without me present. They searched our home.
I mean, every possible state agency that you can imagine that could come after me pretty much has.
I don't want anyone to get sick. I know you guys don't want anyone to get sick. But I also don't want to go bankrupt and lose everything I've worked for, and neither do you. So let's be, you know, active, mature, caring, sensitive to other people, open our business and be cautious, but let's all be able to maintain our livelihoods.
I choose my freedom and my liberties and my right to earn a living as opposed to just obeying. I'm not controlled. I'm not controllable. And so I think that really irritates them, because if I can't be controlled and I'm the voice of other small businesses, then they're not going to be controlled. And that's what the government wants, is to control us. I feel very strongly that my kids someday will be proud of me. I hope they are. I've kept every single letter and card of support from every single person that's mailed me something. Mrs. Graham, we support you in your fight for liberty and your right to work, and we grieve with you and the whole country. Blessings and support from Texas. Proud to be American. But you know what people don't see behind the scenes is the hatred that some people can spew. Tackling social media keyboard warriors right now. They're saying that I made a call for white supremacists to come defend my salon. And she says that she knows for a fact that I called for white supremacists. People that are happy to wake up in the morning and just target me by calling me a murderer and a selfish, greedy business owner, and many, many delightful terms, which I will not say. I really honestly just wanted to, hold on a second. Let's see what he said.
Is there a fundamental right to work if the government can't get me the money when I need it? Is there a fundamental right
you want to go to
work?
work? Go take a job as an essential worker. Do it tomorrow. Right? You're working.
I am.
You're an essential worker. So go take a job as an essential worker.
But the people aren't hiring because of the
No, there are people
pandemic.
hiring. You can get a job as an essential worker. So now you can go to work and you can be an essential worker and you're not going to kill anyone.
Pandemics and epidemics are not new to the United States of America. There was the bubonic plague in 1900, which hit the city of San Francisco. And I believe it was 9 people had died in the city of San Francisco in Chinatown. And the public health official came in and shut down Chinatown, depriving 15,000 people of their ability to make a living, depriving 15,000 people of the ability to move about. And it was determined that the public health official did not have the ability to quarantine 15,000 people because 9 people had passed away due to the bubonic plague.
The case was in the California Supreme Court, and it asked the question, during a pandemic, can you create 2 classes of people? In this case, it was a case that specifically addressed the fact that there was a subpopulation of ethnic minorities that were quarantined while the general population could move around. But in that case, it was very clear that the California Supreme Court stated, and by the way, numerous courts have referenced the decision, that you cannot arbitrarily and capriciously determine one population to whom something applies and another population to whom it doesn't apply. So the whole notion that you can capriciously decide that one population should be impounded and another population should be at liberty is something that violates the very core, not only of the California Supreme Court decision, but the fabric of what it means to be in America.
Effective March 28th at 5 p.m., the following non-essential businesses, venues, and activities shall be closed to non-employees or shall not take place. Fitness centers and commercial gyms, spas, and public or commercial swimming pools.
Everybody's job is essential to them because that's how they earn a living to buy food and shelter.
All places of public amusement, whether indoors or outdoors.
All non-essential retail businesses.
Barbershops, hair salons, waxing salons, threading salons, nail salons, and spas.
You could come up with the most trivial job in the world, and maybe it is, except that guy or that woman needs it.
Furniture and home furnishing stores, clothing, shoe and clothing accessory stores, jewelry, luggage, and leather goods stores.
Shopping malls, recreational facilities, health clubs, spas, recreational facilities, movie theaters, and flea markets are also directed to close.
And for the government to decide who gets paid and who doesn't, based on, again, no science, no data, just arbitrary nonsense, is galling.
This is not the time to try to find loopholes. If your business is not essential to providing sustenance and for the everyday safety, health, and well-being of Nevadans, you must shut down.
We were thriving as an economy. I mean, half of California was moving here for opportunities, and overnight, it just got crippled, and it destroyed my business. And I know people are hurting out there and people are dying, but more people are gonna die and be affected by the shutdown and the illegal closure of the economy than ever would have been hurt by the virus. And it's crazy because we live in a democracy. I never got a vote on this.
We see a very gross overstepping by the state government in that they have deprived people of their ability to make a living.
So let's start the way that we always start, by saying what we know, that we will get through this. We will get through this together. And I'd like you to say it with me. We will get through this. We will get through this together. One more time. We will get through this. We will get through this together. Again, we will get through this.
I disagreed with the shutdown after 2 weeks because they allowed some businesses to stay open and forced others to close. That should never have been allowed. And they did it to churches too. Because they could do it to those businesses, they said, yeah, and the churches are non-essential, okay? To the people who are deciding what's essential. So if they don't think it's essential, then clearly it isn't. It might be essential to you, but you don't count because you're not making the decision. There's no excuse for that.
Mayest all thy sacrifices
and grant thee all thy heart's desire, fulfilling all thy purpose, as his good grace suffices.
There is a fundamental constitutional right to freely exercise your religious beliefs. And the government cannot dictate, no, you can worship, or you can only worship with 100 people, or you can only worship outside on a hill. Government does not have that authority.
Some always trust in chariots, and others trust in horses, but we recall the Lord and God, strong past our own.
You talk about essential versus non-essential. How did you feel when churches were deemed non-essential?
I believe the church is highly essential. We're not just physical beings. I mean, we're mental, emotional, and we're spiritual beings. And to have that cut off, that access where people gather together, it cuts at the core of who we as the church are.
Church is the most vital organism we are a part of. Church is where we draw life from. And to be able to gather together and lift our hands and worship our God with like-minded people. The songs we sing, the way we commune with God, our devotional life, our prayer life, these things are so utterly essential to who we are as people. To remove that from our lives and the pain that causes is devastating. And allowing the people to worship, this is one of our freedoms that we hold dear.
And we had a member of our church who passed away, and she was all by herself. Her family was not able to visit her. I was not able to visit her. Nobody. And that's just not right.
The immobilizing fear has wrecked us. The damage is already done. Even if they say now, open your doors, half of my people are not showing up. And what is absolutely crushing is that Dunkin' Donuts is essential. God is not. Home Depot is essential, but God is not essential.
They said, yeah, and the churches are non-essential. If you need counseling, go to Planned Parenthood. If you need spiritual guidance, go to Planned Parenthood. Or wherever. Go to the liquor store. Go to the marijuana dispensary.
Once you start with churches are not essential, then what's the next step? What's the next step?
Over to 2nd Street here.
Good job, son, Rachel!
You will be known for this.
Today I'd like to provide you with our state's new recommendations from the State Department of Health regarding in-person instruction as it would begin this fall. If every school district brought all of their students back for in-person instruction today, I believe we would see a real meaningful and dangerous increase in COVID activity.
After the closure of the schools in end of March, I mean, a majority of kids did not go online, did not engage in online education, the majority of kids. And now they're continuing that, through the fall of 2020. And many people, including myself, think that that's a huge mistake, a big disservice to the education of these young people, and there's going to be a big educational gap.
It's a disaster to try to teach elementary school kids online. It's a complete failure. It's a bust. Anybody who says otherwise is lying. They don't have the attention span and the focus. They also need a lot of social development. And once you lose significant time in school, you never get it back.
Everybody wants to reopen the schools. It's not do we reopen or not. You reopen if it is safe to reopen. How do you know if it's safe? You look at the data.
In the London Times, there was an epidemiologist who says, we don't have a recorded case of a teacher getting the virus from a student anywhere in the world. It simply doesn't exist.
You violated the United States Constitution in depriving school districts of the ability to make a decision about whether or not they are to be open. You took that decision away from the elected school board, and that violated the United States Constitution.
Most of my morning, I have to be sitting next to these two kids, my kindergarten and third grader. I have to be here because it's so difficult to keep them on task. So my entire morning focus is to sit and be the taskmaster, make sure they're checking into their meetings, make sure they're doing their work, make sure they have their materials, managing the meltdowns, and it gets to be taxing on all of us. I understand that school isn't childcare, but for some of these parents, it's absolutely essential for them to be able to send their child to school so that they can go out and work and provide for their families.
We have quite a few families that have what are called IEPs, and this is something that the federal government has funded the states to provide these services, but because the schools are shut down, these programs are not being utilized, and so those students are falling even further behind, yet the state is still collecting the money for supposedly doing these programs, but they're not doing it.
Zeke was diagnosed with Down syndrome when he was born. So obviously that entails in-depth educational help. And so he has an IEP, which is an individualized education plan to help him thrive. So just this whole online thing is, it's frustrating. It's been a lot of tears, frustration, anger, not getting any of the help and the support that he needs. Zeke's frustrated, he's crying.
Come on, you can get up. Just a little bit of school, come on.
He's not getting the help that to do all these things, he needs intensive help, and he's not getting any of that.
This was the first week of school. Which is page after page. Really? He just lay his head down and just scribble.
Every day I'm just like mentally, physically, emotionally just drained and done. He's just not progressing. And so I'm just watching him fall farther and farther and farther behind.
A public health professional provides sound information to people that allows for them to make the decisions that's best for themselves.
Public health is about incrementalism. It's about doing what the least intrusive intervention is to preserve, public health.
Yeah, I really don't understand why everybody isn't following the same rules right now. They're very clear, so let's take a minute and let's go over them again. First, you must not leave the house for any reason, unless of course you have a reason, and then you may leave the house.
So there's been, ridiculous non-science-based policies put in place. We've kind of lost our way in that.
Closing the beaches. You may play ping pong, but you may not play tennis.
Every player, unless they're from the same household, has to bring their own tennis balls so that you don't touch other people's tennis balls with your hands. You can kick their balls, but you can't touch them. I'm gonna blush, sorry.
Having people wear masks outdoors, when they're running or bicycling, when there's huge diffusion of respiratory droplets by the air, when there's sunlight, which is a natural disinfectant. Does that, make sense scientifically? Not really.
The virus remains active on different surfaces for 2 hours, or 4 hours, or 6 hours, but in most cases it's days and not hours, and it needs a damp environment, or a cold environment that is warm and dry in the air, unless the air is plastic.
What's infuriating is they constantly say, science and data will guide us. And then they shut things down without not one whiff of science, not one whiff of data.
Show us what's informing these decisions about why you think beaches are so important in the transmission of COVID-19 that they need to be closed.
If somebody goes out to walk on the beach, leave them alone. They're not going to get it, and you're not going to get it. If you're afraid of getting it, then stay home. But the guy walking on the beach isn't going to give it to you, so what are you getting upset about?
Hiking trails in my own backyard were closed. Does that make any sense epidemiologically? None whatsoever.
What we could do better is we again could empower people with information that they need to take care of themselves and their families and use that information to protect themselves.
And finally, no businesses will go down due to coronavirus except those businesses that go down due to COVID-19. I hope this cleared up any questions about what we should and should not be doing during this time. Please educate your friends and family with this information so we can remove any and all confusion surrounding this time. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. The conditions last week, the images we saw on a few of our beaches were disturbing. I was very...
But you look at Gavin Newsom, and he's a pretty boy, a rich boy, not the brightest bulb on the tree, and now he's been given this pandemic, and he's being told by hysterical people we're all going to die. He is in over his head. He doesn't know what to do. So he has one weapon he uses, just shut everything down.
But in areas where we didn't see that, particularly in a few cities, few coastal cities off and around the Orange County area, those were the point of particular concern. So today we want to make some clarifications. We're going to do a hard close in that part of the state, just in the Orange County area.
Living in California under Governor Gavin Newsom, the lockdown for us here became much more pronounced. Some states it stayed open and never locked down, but in California it was pretty abrupt, pretty draconian, and pretty intense as far as the things that were going on. You're watching life go on around you. Areas are being locked away from you. Boom, it's restricted now. You can't walk here, and it just felt so un-American that I knew that something was just wrong. When it became open-ended and seemed indefinite with these lockdowns and more things were being restricted from us, finally, our city manager, with the authority of the council voting for him to be able to do this, he was allowed to basically single-handedly make all COVID-19 mitigation efforts and changes in the community on his own, at his discretion. And it wasn't until the beach became off limits that I finally took action. We brought our American flags and some signs with us, protesting the unconstitutional nature of the lockdowns. By the next week, we had somewhere between 500 and 1,000 people, so the movement just kept growing from there. And at this point, Gavin Newsom and other politicians in here who are favoring the lockdown for political reasons, they're laughing at us as we walk up and down the street with our flags. It's not changing anything. And half the time, they weren't even covered because that's not what the mainstream media narrative is. That's not what they want to see. So we had to bump it up a level to civil disobedience. And I thought, well, I know exactly where I want to engage in this act of civil disobedience. It's around this chain link fence that represents this, it looks like a prison yard in the most beautiful area of our community right now. And they've wrapped it up in 6-foot chain link fence. They say to keep cars out, but the cars weren't in there to begin with the temporary barricades. The chain link fence was to keep us out.
There was a city council vote that, the city could deem public property private property, and it does not have a sunset. That did pass. So hence, this parking lot, this fence is now considered, private property.
And so I thought I'm going to organize protesters, and I'm going to announce it to the city and the sheriff's department. We're going to go into that chain link fence, and we're going to disassemble it and stack it up and ask the city to come in and take it away. Hey, brother. Wish my socket wrench was a little stronger. There were about half a dozen people that followed me all the way in. Yeah, you can open it. Come on in. Come on in. Let's go. The parking lot never looked so beautiful. Woo! Yeah.
there was probably 50 to 75 deputies that were lined up around the exterior perimeter of the fence.
They've now been informed that if they cross over, that they will be arrested for, I believe, unlawful assembly.
I will let you walk away at this point. Okay. As long as you stop doing what you were doing. You understand?
I understand.
Okay. We understand what you're up to, and okay. All right. You've been warned. Thank you.
I'm with Alan on this. This is just an eyesore, and it's tyrannical, and it's, like you said, it's a symbol of our government pressing us and protecting us from nothing.
Orders, you guys are unconstitutional. This is our property. We paid for it with city money.
Sir, do you care to make a comment?
I wanted to make a point about what was going on in the community, not just because this was so much bigger than San Clemente. This just represented this unconstitutional aspect of what we've been dealing with. And so my thought was, I'm going to hold on. They've already told me you're under arrest. I'm going to stay in this mode of passive resistance and hope that it would bring attention to what we were doing and why we were doing it.
Alan Hostetter is behind me. Now, if you can see, he has had his hands clasped to the fence this whole time. This is an act, as I understand it, of resisting arrest. So there might be some kind of a quiet, unspoken agreement between these deputies and Alan that once you let go of the fence, then we will arrest you.
If you remain in the area, which was just described, regardless of your purpose for remaining,
what in the hell
you will be in violation of Section 409.
The sheriff's department then decided to do a sweep, and they started to make announcements that it was an unlawful assembly.
Immediately disperse, which means break up the assembly. If you do not do so, you may be arrested or subject to police action. Other police action may include the use of lethal munitions, which could cause significant risk to injury.
If you don't cooperate, less lethal munitions might be used against you. And that, when they made that announcement, just inflamed people. And it certainly made my resolve stronger to stay right where I was at and to draw this out, because I was just livid when they did that in front of all these people.
Tell me I didn't just hear somebody threaten less lethal munitions against innocent people holding American flags. Tell me I didn't just hear that.
Assembly where you induce for remaining. This, however, is an unlawful assembly location.
And then finally, they cut the links around the hands, and then I handed the chain link that I was holding on to each deputy, and then I said, I'm done. And they cuffed me up, took me away.
There we go. We have the arrest of Alan Hostetter. There he is being escorted and being placed in the back of the deputy's vehicle.
The unlawful assembly is now over. This area is open for free passage. However, if you jump that fence and cross over the fence line, you are subject to arrest for trespass. The sidewalk, however, is open for free passage.
How you doing today?
Good to see you.
Me too. One thing that has really come to light through all this, as far as our Constitution and all the freedoms that we have as a result of that Constitution and the Declaration, the Bill of Rights, all of that now people are kind of focusing on and paying attention to, where we think that we live in the freest country in the world, and then something like this happens, and you look around and you realize, wow, somebody can claim a virus, and some health professionals can then turn that Constitution on its head. So how does that affect us and the Constitution as we go forward from here? What will we do when somebody walks into the Oval Office and says, I have a computer model that says 2 million are going to die if we don't shut it down? Will it be the same response? And if it is, based on what we know now, how will we react if that does happen or when that does happen? Because this is something that's just shocked our conscience, shocked the conscience of the nation, and I think has people thinking about the Constitution in a completely different light now than they used to.
When it comes to COVID-19 litigation, the big question in the courts has really come down to where the boundaries are. The United States Constitution reserves for the state something that's called the police powers. And the police powers is what gives the government the ability to pass laws for the health, the safety of the people. It's not just the police department, but it's the health and welfare of the people. But then you have in the Constitution what we call fundamental constitutional rights: free speech, right to protest, freedom to assemble. And what happens is, where are the boundaries? Where does the government's police powers begin and end? And where does your fundamental freedoms begin and end? And that's really what we have been seeing the courts deal with. And some courts have come in and checked the government, and other courts have given the government very wide latitude. And that's why, in the end, these cases are going to make it up to the United States Supreme Court for a fully adjudicated hearing.
Good morning, everybody. Commonwealth, as you know, is focused on monitoring and mitigating the coronavirus outbreak, and we are prepared.
I remember March when they locked down for 2 weeks. I think by like the 4th day of the lockdown, I said, you know, this is just not what they say it is. I'm an HVAC contractor. I do commercial work in restaurants and gyms and tanning salons, nail salons. Although I was considered an essential worker, in essence, when the governor deemed the restaurants and the gyms and all non-essential, he put me out of business, because when they shut down, the work was gone.
Effective Tuesday, March 24th at noon, all non-essential businesses shall close their physical workplaces and facilities to all workers, customers, and the public.
I remember laying in bed, looking at the ceiling, and I was thinking, I'm gonna go under. I mean, I can't sustain this another month. I'm gonna be washed up. And I mean, I knew that there were other people out there in worse condition financially. And I said, you know what? I said, I'm gonna bring a lawsuit against the state of Massachusetts, the governor. I'm gonna stop this lockdown today. It was a challenge trying to find an attorney here in Massachusetts that would be willing to sue the governor.
Never thought I'd be representing a gentleman in a legal situation like this, but you know, these are extraordinary times, and you know, I think God gives us a role and a reason in life at some point. I just think it's wrong. I just think people should not be deprived of a livelihood. I think people should be able to make decisions, adults, on their own. My motivation is, from day one, was to try to uphold the law. You know, if something's gonna be done, it should be done lawfully.
What I really looked at first was that, like anybody would have to do, I had to see, where is he getting this power from? Where is he claiming he has this power to do this? Some states, they give it to the governor in the Constitution. Other states, by statute, legislature gives, they pass laws. I looked at what he claimed for his authority. It's called the Civil Defense Act of 1950. And so it gives him all these powers, immense and extraordinary powers. And so it was meant for wartime. It's all militaristic type language. There's nothing in there which remotely can be interpreted as covering a virus. It's going to take a stretch to fit the definition within that statute. If the Supreme Judicial Court holds that the governor had no authority, then everything he's done is void, wiped out. He never had the power to do it.
I went to rallies. I talked about the lawsuit that I was getting together to sue Baker, interviewed with some newspapers. You know, everybody's waiting for somebody else to do it. And, you know, that's not how it works here. You know, I will fight for those who can't fight for themselves. You know, the ones that don't know any better, you know, or they're too afraid to step up. Somebody's got to do it. And if not me, who? And if not now, when?
Baker issued that order, so if the SJC decides in October you never had the power, then everything goes since March 10th. Goodbye. Everything is done.
So,
all right.
I'll
see you in a while.
I'll see you in a little bit.
All right. All right. Yeah.
That was Tom, the lawyer, my attorney. The AG's office is looking for full dismissal of our federal case based on the 11th Amendment, which gives the governor sovereignty to do what he wants, basically. Because of the lawsuit that I brought forward, I've had death threats mailed to my house, people trying to burn down my house. I've been physically attacked on the street. I've had my windshield broken on my vehicle twice in a couple of months. I've been called a white supremacist, a racist, a xenophobe, and it's the farthest from the truth. This isn't about me. This lawsuit has just taken from my life, you know, but the greater good of the Constitution, you know, for everybody, you know, and that's the country. So 1996, my daughter was 2 years old. So 26 years ago, she bought this for me, and it's been in my possession since 1996.
What's it mean to you?
I don't know, it's just something my daughter gave me. You know? It's a touchy one. Everybody has walked away. My children are very liberal, and they believe, you know, in progressive liberal things, you know, and because of the lawsuit that I brought forward, you know, it was almost kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. Fear is that powerful. When it comes down to it, I'm a good guy, you know, I mean, I put God, country, and family. I've held those values since I was a young boy, you know, my father instilled that in me, and it's always been God, country, and family. And, you know, I believe in doing the right thing. You know, I was supposed to get married in September, and with everything that was going on with the house almost being burnt down, the death threat, FBI involved in my life, over the death threat, she gave me a decision, drop the lawsuit or she was gonna leave. And as much as I loved her, I love my country more.
Freedoms. The freedoms that I felt, you know, that I saw being nibbled away, what disappointed me was, more than anything, was the people. The people just accepting it. No questions, nobody asked the magical question, why? Why are they doing this? What is driving this? What's backing this up? Nothing.
Nobody Somebody asked appropriate questions about the lockdown. How long? That would have been a good question to ask. Why? Another good question.
Does this virus call for the mass societal shutdown? To actually ask everyone, regardless of their own personal situation, to take the exact same action? And the answer is no. There's no scientific merit that says that.
Do we have an epidemic in younger people at such an extent that we need to shut down the economy, shut down schools, shut down recreation? I don't think so.
And you start asking the question, like, who has something to gain from this? How much of our freedoms are going to be encroached upon, you know? And is this the starting point of something more, something different?
I get the feeling that part of this is like a trial run, because it just wasn't nearly as bad as they said it was going to be. And that, to me, is suspicious.
This is a test to see how much of our civil liberties we're going to let go of without protests, without any kind of intervention, without us drawing a line in the sand and saying, no, this is a trial run. We've basically let ourselves be locked into our homes, separated from our families, separated from our lives and our livelihoods, and we've basically just let it happen. So as a test, we're at least at a D, and I'd give us an F right now. I think we're failing this one.
I was very disheartened by the obeisance of the American people. That they just, you tell me that I have to do this? Okay, I'm doing this now. I think that that's sort of, in a sense, it's un-American. In a sense, it's very socialist. And so I think it really proves how far down that path we've gone.
Carl Sandburg had a poem about the fog and says, the fog comes in on little cat feet. And that's how I look at kind of the road to more government intrusion or socialism, if you shall say, that it creeps in bit by bit. It certainly did that in medicine, and it did that with regular government programs, Social Security, Medicare. It sort of comes in and, boy, this is going to be really good for you. And then more and more and more add-ons, and then suddenly we don't know what life would be without it.
It's like the drip effect of marketing is what we call it. You just start chipping away at it, chipping away at it, chipping away at your freedoms, chipping away at your morality, chipping away at your spirituality, and pretty soon there's a normacy to it, right? Oh, okay, it's not that bad.
This absolutely has strong elements of pick your communist dictatorship. Russia, China, East Germany. And there was an especially strong push for this recently. It's been bubbling. The Trump election accelerated it. People are getting very radical. And there's a lot of these socialist movements, the Bernie Sanders movement, for example. I mean, he attracted tens of millions of people.
And that is why I have introduced legislation that would make every public college and university in America tuition-free.
And so when you have political leaders emerging with large followings and media pushing their coverage in the same direction, you had this fluky virus that gave everybody a chance to try out their theories.
And then you're in a place where it's close to tyranny and dictatorship. And that's what people are getting a taste of right now. This is not the early stages. It's been going on.
Right, there's a lot of concern and stress about the loss of civil liberties in our country today, and there's legitimate reason for that, but it's not without precedent. Throughout history, those seeking the power always turn to a crisis to implement what it is they're trying to gain from people.
We have a pandemic right now. Where do you see parallels with pro-Constitution, and where do you see parallels with pro-socialism in how the handling of this has been done within the United States of America?
The United States has been moving towards centralized government for a long, long time. And every new program, every new administration, they tend to consolidate more power. The COVID-19 virus was a giant leap in that direction. Now the people can see what the government can do for them or against them. The problem that it is for the family at home is, can my job survive me not being there, or will I have a job to go to when this is over with? The day-to-day family, the paycheck-to-paycheck family, this was a very bad situation. My father, W. Cleon Skousen, a prolific writer and speaker, had a career in police work, a career at the FBI. He was one of J. Edgar Hoover's communications directors during World War II. My father wrote The Naked Communist. It was a Cold War bestseller, sold over 1 million copies back in the late 50s, early 60s. Today I'm trying to help expand on what my father was working on to promote the Constitution and liberty and the dangers that are impacting this nation of ours. Socialism is the consolidation of power. So socialists seek to destroy our three-branch system, or at least use those, the legislative, executive, and the judiciary, use those to promote their singular goals. So to socialize a nation usually takes, 30 to 50 years of constant effort, and the government can do this for you, and you're not responsible for your own outcome. You were born into this. The rich, they owe you. All of those elements, they're not new to the 20th century or 21st. They've been around throughout history. That's the direction the country's been going, and President Reagan was trying to dismantle that.
We believe in the rule of law. We know that a nation cannot be liberated by depriving its people of liberty.
Early in his career, he wasn't that informed, but he had his eyes opened, he understood, he ran for office, and so he definitely was striving to undo the centralization of power in our government. So with our pandemic going on, the great risk to our civil liberties is the expansion of government into personal areas of our life that are not otherwise blockaded by law, by the Constitution. Now, in a pandemic, of course, there's certain powers to preserve the safety of our nation, and that's good. The founders, they wanted us to have those powers, but they wanted those powers controlled by the people.
So raised in France, as you know, it's a socialist country, and they don't consider themselves as free in France. I'm not sure if you're aware of the taxes. They will take half of your paycheck. You understand? It's half of your paycheck that's gone. So you can't really be free because you are under the thumb of this ideology that the government is helping you, but it's really not helping you at all. You're becoming a slave, that's really what's happening.
And we have that going on now because a lot of people have been forced out of work by the government and are now given a check by the government. In some cases, the check is so generous, it's more than they would get at their job. Which if let's say you're 25 years old, that's pretty good. Why would you want to go back to work? And now you're dependent on the state.
And I see so many things today where it's free. Why do I have to work when I can get free money? I can get free cell phones. I just want to sit home. And this country has been so good. It offers so many opportunities. And yet people aren't taking advantage of those except for the welfare type opportunities.
In France, the ruler is the one who makes the law, not the people. So they can say all they want that it is for the people, but it's not. How's that look like when you give half of your paycheck away? When millions of people are giving their paycheck away? What power is that? What power do you have? None. You can't exit.
The boundary between sliding through socialism and getting into communism is usually the introduction of government force. Socialism typically involves a free market society that evolves with more and more regulation. People vote for these things and they accept it and they bring it in. Slipping into communism is where that same process is sped up with violence.
If you fail to disperse immediately, you are subject to arrest.
Now here in the United States, we've gotten close to that when people get arrested for being on the beach or not wearing a mask.
Having a nice, beautiful, normal day here at the park. A police officer just arrived, so he said, go home, you could be cited or arrested. He says, I could cite all of you if I want.
Am I being arrested or detained? Am I arrested or detained? Okay, can you call him?
Yeah. This makes no sense.
Where are your kids? This is so wrong.
So we can congregate in the grass, but the kids can't play on the playground?
So yes, that's getting towards that boundary of where we would say communism and guns is the next step.
The less human contact we have, the more control we have over your safety and well-being.
So when a governor gets up there and makes arbitrary, unfair decisions, and the people respond and the governor clamps down with force, now we're bordering on communism. Now we're becoming a street scene out of North Korea or Beijing.
I came from a city that everyone knows now. It's called the city of Wuhan, and where the virus broke out in the beginning. So I grew up there for 17 years, so literally that was my hometown. 1980 was a period of time where China, was mostly open politically. So we were more daring, can do things, say things. So I went to the street and I lead the parade. I spoke in public and for freedom and democracy and things like that. The experiment of communism, I think, is the most costly experiment that humankind does in its whole entire history. Nearly 100 million people died in 100 years, this so-called experiment. And it seems to me that Americans, especially young Americans, they didn't even know that happened. And I came from China. I ran away from that. And I see a lighter version is just happening. Like people are just very naive and they don't seem to know what they're getting into, especially those young people. They all have good, good intention, okay? And the communist, in short, in my view, is an evil conducted in the name of the good. It's very deceiving in the beginning.
If you want to know if the American people will respond to fear without question and follow rules, I think we have our answer. How far are we conformed into the communist mindset? Pretty darn far.
And I tell my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchild, they will never see the freedoms that we saw. Everything we're looking at right now is same as communism. And look how many years we fought that communism. I was part of that group that fought that communism back in my service career.
We should be concerned simply because, everything happens in trends and culture. Nothing just happens abruptly when it comes to government ordinances, policies, and things of that nature.
It's not something to be proud of right now. Having your government have the ability to take your rights and your liberties and your freedoms away from you, we should not be proud of that. I'm not proud of that.
So as we continue to see the ripple effect going down the line, the true test of how unmasked we've made this effort to socialize the country, the true test will be how willing the American people are to get back on their own feet and take charge of their own lives and risk their own freedom to fail and succeed. And that's a freedom that socialism does not allow.
This is the New York City Police Department. Non-essential gatherings of any kind have been prohibited by the governor and the mayor. This gathering is unlawful, and you are ordered to disperse. If you fail to disperse immediately,
This is sick.
you are subject.
She's press. This girl is press, and they're locking her up. That's crazy. She's press. She's just filming the dismantling of America. That's all she's doing. That's crazy. She's not even a protester. She's press. That is ridiculous. Let her go.
The pandemic, as we moved through it, there was a violation of a lot of rights, and people were very upset and were saying, hey, you can't do that.
This is not. What about the Constitution, guys? If you're following the law, but you're not following the Constitution, wake up, guys. This is crazy. You're better than this. Come on.
The New York City Police
Here we go with this nonsense. Why don't one of you guys talk?
Any kind have been
That's why the people have to be in charge. They have to be able to say, you've gone too far, and pull back those powers.
You can't even speak for yourselves because you know this is wrong, and you're doing it for a pension. For a pension. You're destroying America. You're destroying the Constitution for a pension.
As things don't pan out to make common sense, that's when we turn around and look back at ourselves and say, I have to take care of myself, and I have to do what's right for me, and I'm not going to do something that's going to harm somebody else, but I still have to do what's right for me.
There is an awakening going on, and people are paying attention to their constitutional rights, paying attention to what it means to be an American and have freedom to move, freedom to shop where you want to shop, freedom to wear a mask or not wear a mask.
A lot of people did rise up and got on the steps of their Capitol buildings and protested.
Gavin Newsom is committing crimes against humanity. He is a criminal with the acts that he is doing. The most lawless and worst governor in the history of this state. Absolutely horrible.
So the fallout from all of that is now a distrust of political power.
And a lot of those abuses are resulting in many governors going through recall efforts right now. Here in California, there is a recall effort of Gavin Newsom. There are many states that have that provision, and we have seen that the citizens are so upset that they have started recall efforts of their governors.
Come on now, listen. We have Governor Newsom. I know some of you just threw up your breakfast, but we have Governor Newsom right now. And Major Williams, I mean, seriously, you're running for governor in 2022. Have you been checked? I mean, are you okay? Are you mentally stable? I mean, this state is going in the toilet. What would you do to fix it? Hello, California! So listen. I'm frustrated just like you. I'm a parent just like you. I see the disparities going on in our community. I see our rights being taken away from us. It's time for us to stand up, use our voices, and we need a champion to be able to do that. Can I get an amen? We love God, right? We love our guns, right? And we love our freedom, right? That's why I'm running to become the next governor of California.
We are in a spiritual war, and we have to make sure that we are aware of that and see all the identifiers and just match it towards history that wasn't good for our country. We have to make sure that we are activated in multiple ways. And how we do that is get behind policy, use our voices, use petitions, and make sure that we hold people accountable publicly and openly for the discretions and policies that they've been a part of. start running for these offices as well, and supporting people who align with your beliefs and the things that you want to get accomplished in a community that's going to be a positive effect and add value to your, whether it's your region, your state, your community, or the entire United States.
We have to fight how they fight. We have to get clever. We have to be vicious. We have to be vigilant. We have to be hardcore California.
Consistency is the key word, because we know that when we're riled up about something, we're gun-ho for a good small portion of time, and then it kind of just fades out, right? We can't allow that to happen. They're relying and hoping that that happens this time around. Consistency is going to be key, and staying activated and standing behind people and individuals and candidates that support our cause. Governor Gavin Newsom, he passed over 40-something laws by himself without the legislative arm that's a part of our Constitution on how those bills are supposed to be produced. But he's doing that, using it as an emergency and passing bills without the consent or the consideration of the advice and counsel of people who's supposed to be a part of that process.
Well, what we're seeing now is a precedent that has been established. So at some future emergency time, similar shutdowns can be employed, and they will refer back to COVID-19. When COVID-19, you saw how this was effective, and now we need to do thus and so. It's important that the American people get back there and say, you took liberties that you were not authorized to take, and we're not going to let that happen again. So here's some additional barriers we want put into our state constitution or our body of legal works, so that next time you think, oh, I can do it because I'm the governor or the president or Congress, that can't happen.
I'm sure each and every one of you guys know Senator Melissa Melendez. She's wonderful. She is for you people. She is for us and stands beside us.
Are you sick and tired of being treated like royal subjects? Yeah. If when this shutdown started, if they said every legislator, your paycheck stops until everybody else is allowed to go back to work, I guarantee you the state would be open. So this is what I want you to do. I want everyone here, I want you to write a letter to the editor of every newspaper who will take it from you and tell them how you feel. I want you to send a letter or an email to the governor's office and tell him exactly how you feel. I want you to go to your city council meetings, your water district meetings, your school board meetings, your board of supervisor meetings. What I want you to do is tell them that you expect them to stand up for you. You expect them to send a letter on your behalf in their official capacity to tell the governor to stop what he's doing and let people get back to work. He's losing nothing by the state being shut down, but he is gaining something, and that's control. And I am not going to stand by and watch him do this. Are you with me? Do not give up. Do not give in. Thank you. God bless you, and God bless America.
Freedom is not free, and justice is never overnight. When our founding fathers signed the Declaration of Independence, just because they signed the document saying we are separating from Great Britain doesn't mean that they got immediate justice. They had to fight for years for those inalienable rights. Eventually, the tyranny got to a level that they said enough is enough. They declared their independence, and they funded a war to kick the British out. Just like the power was in the hands of the colonists, the tyranny that we are living in right now is no different. And I am seeing that the shutting down of churches, the shutting down of restaurants, the shutting down of schools is crossing party lines. And there is an opportunity for each and every one of us, by simply ensuring that the 50, 100, 200 people who live closest to us, if we can get them out to vote, we can fundamentally change what's going on in our communities, in our states and in the United States of America.
Your city council person, school board person of today is going to be the person running for state assembly tomorrow, and then after that running for Congress. So you have to start paying attention to who these people are.
And when you're voting, look for the candidate who leans more freedom and less enslavement, less government overreach.
We are in a pinnacle place right now. And if we don't step up loudly, boldly, and proudly and change the dynamics of the leaderships that we are electing moving forward, then we are going to see an even greater shift of control in our state, in our country, than we've ever seen before. That's what we all have to fight for, and that's why choice is so important in everything that we're doing here, not just in California, but the United States.
I keep looking for the hope that's in the whole situation, or even the next situation. Where's the positivity in this? Where's the optimism? How do you see that people can rise up from the ashes of something like the pandemic and take that and move forward to try to make sure that something like this isn't pulled from them again, meaning their civil liberties?
You know, Tocqueville talked about America as an experiment. And I love that metaphor right now because it feels like we're in an experiment. The experiment was that there was this notion that maybe people, given to their own devices, could come up with something that was better than what the church had done for thousands of years, that was better than what monarchs had done for hundreds of years, that was better than what industrialists were starting to do in Europe. This idea, this American ideal, which was, what if people ran the experiment? We get to declare the experiment over, and we get to declare a new experiment that says, let's start with we the people. Let's make sure people matter, not just the educated elect few. Let's make sure that liberty is not liberty except for circumstances when despots seek to grab power. Let's look at the pursuit of happiness and remember that the pursuit of happiness is not the accumulation of things. We forgot what life was. We decided life was avoiding death. The fear of death is the reason why we can be subjugated to fearing a virus. So was that life? Was that what the framers of the Constitution were thinking about? Absolutely not. And no time could be more optimistic because we, the people, have a more perfect union that we can establish. And we've been given a moment in history where this story can be Remember 2020, or it can be Remember 1776. And that's on us.
Take a breath, I'm not gonna lose. This is what I came here to do. I walk that wire and I take that step.